Hey guys, thanks for joining us on Woman of Purpose podcast, and I'm really excited about today's episode. I have with me Sierra Bradway. We did a podcast with her and her husband Jake not too long ago, and so today we're just gonna spend some time with Sierra, and I'm really, really excited. So welcome, Sierra. Can you just share just a little bit about where you're at right now before we get into your story?
Yeah, so like she said, my name is Sierra, and I go here to World Harvest. We've been here almost 10 years now. Pretty crazy to think about, but we come here full time. Our kids come here. I'm a mom of 3 with 1 on the way. Happily married. We're leaders here at the church. We serve in different areas. We love our church family. I own a daycare in the area, so that's a lot of fun also. And spiritually, I'm doing great. It's if you would look at me then and look at me now, you would never think I'm the same person, but I love Jesus, and I'm so excited with what he's doing in my life in this season and what he continues to do through me, and I'm just excited to see him continue to move and move everyone else.
Yeah, that's so cool. So baby's due pretty soon, and so that's 4.
Baby is due pretty soon. Technically, it's about 5 weeks, but if he's early, like the other kiddos, it will be anywhere from 4 to 5 weeks.
It's going to be adorable. Can't wait.
I'm excited.
I love babies. I like other people having babies.
Yeah, I'm excited to have the baby, but I'm not excited to have the baby.
Right. Yeah. Got to go through the pain for the gain, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
and take care of the baby and
so
all that
cool.
fun stuff.
Babies are a blessing.
Oh, for sure.
They're a blessing. So, Sierra, last time that I had you on here, you were with Jake, and we talked about your guys' testimony together. And so today I really wanted to just talk about your story and where you grew up. And before we started recording, we talked about the importance of a testimony and how when somebody goes through the things like you went through and comes out in healed and whole and free, that's when your story can really become, it's not like something that I went through as in a bad thing, even though some things were bad, but you realize that it actually made you the person that you are today. It had a handle in where you're at today, all the things that you were describing earlier. And so I'm super proud of you. And I know some of these things are going to be hard to talk about, but I know that where you're at today, I would never ask you to do this if you were not strong and healthy and whole. So thank you for saying yes to this. And I really do believe that today's episode is going to bring some freedom to a lot of women. So I appreciate you wanting to be vulnerable and transparent about this, about your story.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, so if you want to just go ahead and go for it.
Go into it. Well, yeah, so I am Native American, so I grew up on the reservation over in Maple Plain, which is the Cumberland area. And I didn't live there my whole life. I grew up, like my first few years, I was like out in the country, and then we moved on to the reservation when I was probably, 5 or 6 years old, and everything was good from looking on the outside. It looked like just a perfect little life. We had a nice house on the lake, and my mom and dad were married, and it was just me at the time, and everything was really good. It wasn't until I was probably about, 10, 11, when I really started to notice, the difference in my life compared to other people's lives, my friends' lives and stuff like that. I wouldn't want to invite them over to my house because I would go to their house and then I would realize like what was happening in my house or in my area on the reservation, and it's a whole different life when you live out there. So one of the first things that I realized was not normal, I guess, or was kind of a traumatic experience for me was when a woman hits puberty or when they get their period for the very first time. Something in the Native American culture is they do something a little bit different. So you don't just get your womanhood and you just go do whatever, I actually had to stay locked in my room for a week. And the only time I could come out of my room is if my parents left the house or if my family left the house. And then I could come out and I could eat or I could wash my dishes. And I had to use the same dishes for that week, and nobody else could eat off of my utensils or drink out of my cup or anything like that. I couldn't go use the bathroom if anybody was home, or if they were around, I had to go out when they weren't around. And I had to do that for that whole week where I was isolated and locked in my room. And then for a whole year, you're not allowed to hold babies. You would have to wear gloves on, like put gloves on you if you were going to hold babies. You couldn't walk over anybody because you were considered unclean. So if you were to step over them, you could make them sick initially, or
so is this
stuff
just
like that.
for the first year? So when you, like you said, you hit puberty, and then for the first year of that time, then that's what happens?
Yeah, because then you're coming into womanhood. You're becoming an adult. You're becoming a woman, and you're getting clean, I guess, over that year. Okay. So then they would also say that we couldn't swim. You couldn't go swimming for that whole year because you would kill a fish, and you couldn't eat any wild game. So you couldn't eat any like fish or deer meat, which I love. Yeah. It's so good. And so you couldn't eat any wild game for a whole year. And so that was really, really hard because, and I think in the moment when those things were going on, I didn't realize the effect it was having on me. But, you know, I was isolated for that week, and I was being told I wasn't clean, and I was being told I would kill the fish and the stuff if I were to go swimming and stuff like that. So I think it just planted these little seeds inside of me that I didn't realize that would come out later in life. So that was kind of an odd thing that I went through. So I never really shared it with my friends because, I mean, when they got their womanhood, you know, it was kind of fun for them. They got to, like, go shopping with their moms and go figure out how to be a woman, where me, I'm, like, locked in my room for a week and can't do certain things for a year. So that was hard, and that was interesting. And like I said, I grew up on the reservation, and I come from a Native American background, and the culture is beautiful. Like, it's a very beautiful culture. Yeah. But I think some of the things that they follow is more looking at it now, and where I am now with Jesus, looking back at it, they're more, some of the things they do is more on a different spiritual level that I wouldn't say lines up with Jesus. And I can see now, looking back at it, the effects it had on me. And if it was Jesus, I wouldn't have felt or been in the situation I was in, or felt the way I did, you know, because you should never feel isolated or alone when you have Jesus. Like, Jesus makes you feel whole and feel peace and all of that. And I never felt that back then. So yeah, that was one really traumatic experience that I had. Looking at it now, it was a traumatic experience, but in the moment I was like, okay, this is just what we do. Sure. But yeah, like I said, the Native American culture is very beautiful. I grew up going to powwows and stuff like that. I was actually princess one year at a powwow, which was really cool. So yeah, that was one really big thing for me. And I, like I said, I didn't want to really invite my friends to come over to my house, because I would go to their house or something, and it would just be this calm, nice house, and you don't really see much. And on the reservations, it's hard to, like, I feel bad saying it, but there's a lot of stereotypes against Native Americans, but it's true at the same time. There is a lot of drugs that go on out there. There is a lot of alcoholism. There's a lot of poverty out there. So you see a lot of stuff out there that you don't see in a normal day-to-day life. You know, it was normal for me to see people drinking heavily all the time and fighting each other. And I'll never forget one time, I seen people chasing each other with, like, axes and with knives and stuff, and that was just completely normal. I was like, oh, that's just what you do when you drink. You get angry and fight each other and chase each other with axes. And one time somebody had actually pulled a gun out on my dad because he was drinking and he was intoxicated. And again, it just was normal for me. I'm like, oh, they're just being wild again, you know. And when I went to a friend's house, that's not what happened. You rarely seen parents drinking. If you did, there was like a glass of wine for dinner or something, you know. And so it's hard for me to want to bring friends out there. And as I got older, I started to realize more stuff that was going on out there. I would see, you know, pounds of marijuana. I would see rocks of crack cocaine. I would see cops raiding houses. I was actually in a house once that the cops came and raided, and they put us all on the couch and had us at gunpoint, and they were, like, searching through the whole house because they were looking for somebody that they thought was in that house. And they were hiding in the attic, and it was just normal. It was just a normal experience for me to just have guns pointed at my head and have cops running through the house like wild. And I don't know. So I just grew familiar with it, and I grew comfortable with it, and that was my normal. But I also knew at the same time it wasn't normal, so I wouldn't invite people into that part of my life. I'd say, oh, I can hang out with you, but let's go to your house. We can't go to my house, or, you know. So I don't know. It was interesting living on the reservation. I definitely seen a lot. I seen a lot of people living very poorly. It was normal to, because you get per capita checks out there, so you don't really have to work. And a lot of the houses you live in, you don't really pay a whole lot to live there. So I feel almost it's kind of a lose-lose for some of those people out there, because you're getting handed everything and you're not getting forced to go work and learn how to be an actual adult and how to actually earn what you're working for. You know, you just get handed things. So it's like, it's enabling almost, you know. So we lived out there for a while till I was probably about 13. And then my mom, she had a really good job at the casino at the time, and she ended up having back surgery, and that's when our whole life completely was transformed for the worse. She had back surgery, and she got addicted to the pain medicine that they gave her. And then it wasn't enough to get the pain medicine here, and I don't know if they have it figured out now. I think they do, but where they couldn't cross-reference each other from state to state. So she would go get the pain medicine in Minnesota, and she would also get it here in Wisconsin. So she would have like double the dosage. So then as she was going to Minnesota to travel, she had met this guy over there. And like I said, she was married at the time to my dad, and my dad was a great dad and stuff like that. And so it's really hard for me to see him go through the things she put him through, because one day she just came home and she was like, we're moving, we're leaving, you know, we're going to leave your dad, we're going to up and move. And my brothers were born at this time. They were little dudes. And she moved us to live to Minneapolis to live with this man that we had no idea who he was. And she brought us to the ghetto of Minneapolis. I remember it was such a bad neighborhood that we had like a crappier car. It wasn't a nice car at all, because we had lost everything at this point. She had gone bankrupt. She had all of our vehicles taken away. They were in so much debt, because I think now too, you have to, at least when Jake and I took a loan out, we had to sign it together. But I think back then you could take out loans without your significant other there. So she took out all these different title loans and all these different loans, and they were crazy in debt. And so we got over there, we had a crappier car, and you know those little $60 radio systems that they put in, that you can like install into a car? Well, we had one of those, and it was in the car. And our very first night there, somebody had busted the window and took that CD player. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be fun. A great neighborhood. And of course, I'm at the stage now of my life where I want to rebel and just...
You were a teenager, right, at this time?
I was a teenager, yep. So I would have been 13, 14. And we were living in Minneapolis, and I was one of the only... Even though I'm Native, I am more white, and I look more white. So I was the only white person in an all-black person school. There's a few Hispanics there, but it was a huge transformation going from the school I went to here in Wisconsin to Minneapolis, going to that kind of environment. It was scary. It was really scary. So I did everything I could to fit in, to try to help mold myself into these other people, so I would feel not left out, or I wouldn't be scared almost. And we happened to live across the street from a park that had gangs over there, had a gang over there. And of course, me being a teenager rebelling, because I hated my mom at the time for what she did to my dad and for making us move and all the things I went through. And I was just carrying so much on my shoulders. I'm like, I'm gonna go be a part of this gang and go hang out with them and be friends with them, and I'll feel safe with them at least, you know? So I got to know them, and there was a girl over there who kind of took me in and took me under her wing, and I thought it was a good relationship, because I thought I was making a friend, and I had somebody I could trust and count on. But at the same time, she was bringing me to parties where I was introduced to drugs and alcohol, and I was introduced to different men and different scenarios, and it was really scary. I'll never remember one night it was on this like piece of glass, and looking at it now, I think it was meth. It was like a clear, crystal-y kind of thing. And she's like, just snort it, you'll feel better. And I was like 13, 14 at this time. I was just trying to be cool and fit in and feel like I was a part of something. And so we did it. We did the stuff on the glass. And then I woke up the next day, and to this day, I don't know what happened. And we were both just laying there, and we were at a party, so I don't know what happened. And I just continued to do it. I continued to just let her run me almost, because I felt safe and I felt comfortable and I felt like I had somebody. So I continued to party, and I was sneaking out, and we lived in an apartment in the second story. And my mom obviously was trying to be somewhat of a mom that she could, you know, and when she's on drugs herself and drinking. And so I snuck out one night, and I jumped out of the second story window. I don't know how I'm alive or how I didn't break a bone, but they caught me down there. There was like 4 guys and that girl, they all caught me. And then I actually ran away. I ran away at a point that when I lived over there, and I was missing for a few days. And I decided, I think I just got scared. You know, it's like, this isn't what I want, you know, because we were in a car and we were being chased, and guns were being shot at this gang. We were being chased, and I'm like, this isn't what I want to do with my, like, I don't want to die, you know. I was little. I was 13, 14 years old. So I returned to school. Of course, when I got to school, the cops were called, and I got picked up. And so then I got shipped back to my dad's house. And I kind of did the same thing there. I rebelled with my dad. I would say not as much as with my dad as my mom. My dad was more strict, and he was more strict, where I knew I couldn't get away with as much. I tried, but...
What do you think the reason was? You know, you grew up on a reservation, and you had all of that going on there, you know, just, you said, you know, it was a really beautiful culture, and there's a part of the Native American you know, culture that is just really phenomenal and really great, but a lot of just the things that happened there, and then the things with your mom. What do you think was one of the reasons why you rebelled and why you had to go find this gang, and what do you think was one of the things that caused you to do that?
I think anger. I think a lot of it was anger. A lot of it was insecurity. A lot of it was not feeling good enough and feeling worthy. I didn't feel, being a mom now and seeing like how much my kids, especially the girls, need me, and my son, like they need the nurturing from the mom. I didn't receive that from my mom. Even when she was sober and she wasn't on the drugs and, you know, doing all of those things, I never really received that from her. I never really received the mom's love that a child is supposed to receive. She was always so busy in her own little world and traveling, because when she worked at the casino, she would go to Las Vegas all the time and all these different places. So I never really had somebody there to show me what a mother's love is supposed to feel like. I kind of just felt like I was just there without a mom. So I think a lot of it was just not feeling loved and not feeling worthy of being loved, or not feeling like I was ever enough for her no matter how much I tried. And I was like, well, she didn't give it to me when she was in the right state of mind. Why would she give it to me when she's in this state of mind now? So I felt if I would rebel, maybe I would get some kind of reaction out of her. Maybe she would show me that she cared that I ran away. Maybe she would show me that she cared that I was out all night and I came home and she didn't know where I was. And I never got that from her, even after all of those things. You know, when I ran away, she was never like, I was so scared, like that, whatever. You know, she was more angry with me. And even though it was a reaction, it wasn't, I just wanted a hug or something from her, you know, just to show me, like, I love you, like, you really scared me, you know, and I never got that. So I think I was really striving to try to get that emotion out of her, to get that love out of her. And I never got it. So I felt I just did anything I could to try to get that love out of her.
It's like, it's so interesting how, you know, as a kid does not have the capability to think. Like right now you can see what your young Sierra needed, but at the time you really had no idea.
No idea.
You know, you're just trying to feel that acceptance and that belonging, and that, like you said, you were insecure, you were angry. So, you know, as a kid, you don't know what to do. I always tell people, it's like my behavior isn't, so what you see me doing, my behavior is something I'm doing, but it goes so much deeper. So it's like, I could tell you, you know, hey, quit doing that, but ultimately there was something inside of you, that trauma, that thing that was from back here, that you just had to, you know, behave badly because of something that was broken on the inside of you. And I don't know your mom, never met your mom, but it's so interesting how, you know, broken people break people. You know, and I don't, you know, she didn't know what she was doing, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate, but it's cool how, you know, the things that you did and decided to do, that you realized at some point, this isn't really what I want. So you knew that the behavior wasn't really going to get you what you truly needed. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and even though I knew that, I continued to do it.
Yeah.
Because I was just young and didn't know any better at the time. So I continued to do it with my dad, and it's crazy because I have two brothers, and we're full siblings, but we never grew up together. So anytime I lived with my mom, they lived with my dad, and if they lived with my dad, I lived with my mom, and we would kind of just swap kids. So it was weird that I never grew up with them. But anyway, so I was living with my dad, and then I was like, I don't want to live with you. I'm going back with mom. I think I had a boyfriend at the time, and we broke up, and I was like, I don't want to be here anymore, so I'm going with mom. And so I went back with my mom, and then that's when things got really bad at that point. She had moved back to the Cumberland area, and she was a full-blown drug addict at the time. And I was, at this point, probably 15. I think 15, yeah, because I was working at Subway. And it was my first job, and I actually really liked working at Subway. It was kind of nice. But I was working to pay our bills, and my mom had it figured out where if we moved into a place at a certain month, it was like the late fall, and she somehow was able to get the money for us to move into these places, and they were like decent places, you know, where she would get the first month rent, the last month rent, and a security deposit, and she would get us in there. But I don't know how I'm like, I don't know how you did that, because it would be like $3,000 you would need to even move in. But then we wouldn't pay any bills through the whole winter because legally they weren't allowed to kick you out during those months. So she had it figured out to a science for all of that stuff. But I'll never forget, it was a couple times after doing that back and forth, and my friends and I was driving at the time. I was 16, and I was like, okay, I need to stop at my house and get a sweater. I don't remember why I had to stop there. But I remember I walked upstairs, and we were living in an upstairs apartment at this time. And at this time, she was dating a guy. I think they actually got married at the courthouse. I don't remember if that happened yet. But she was married to a guy who was an alcoholic, so that was another disaster, where he had to be, in order to be sober, he had to be drunk. And if he wasn't, it was weird. Like if he didn't have any alcohol in his system, he was hallucinating and going crazy. I've never seen anything like it. He was like drinking mouthwash in order to it was weird. I don't know. It was scary. But I remember one time, me and my friends, I'm like, I need to stop at my house and get something and do something. So we stopped there. And I walked in and I said, where's my mom? He goes, I don't know. So I walked in because her door was shut, and I walked in, and I walked into her with a belt around her neck, and she was trying to hang herself. And I ran over there and I pulled her down, and I said, what are you doing? And she was so out of it. She had no idea what she was doing. And I was just thinking to myself, like, if I never would have showed up, he was out of his mind in there. Like, she could have lost her life in there, you know, because they were both just so out of it. And then I just had to go back down to my friends and pretend like nothing happened in there. You know, I just had to hold it together inside. And I'm like, all right, let's go continue doing what we're doing after just seeing my mom trying to kill herself and hang herself in the room, you know. And those just became normal to me, you know, watching my mom go through these things or have these experiences. And I just had to leave and be like, okay, that's and just act normal in the situation, you know. It was really, really hard to do. And she continued to do that. She continued to try to do suicidal things, and she ended up in a mental hospital 1 or 2 times because we would call in on her, because it got to a point where it was really, really scary. And her boyfriend wasn't any better. He would just add gasoline to the fire, and it just would blow up, you know. And one time he brought a gun in the house, and they were shooting it in the house, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, what are you doing? You know, it was scary. It was so scary. So then I was in high school at this time, and like I said, my mom was at her worst, and I was working to take care of her, to take care of our bills, and I wanted so hard to have the normal teenage life, and I tried everything I could to have that normal life. But at the same time, I'm having to worry about my mom and having to take care of her and make sure she's eating, make sure she's not out of her mind, checking on her daily because I wasn't living there anymore. At this point, I moved out and I was living with a friend. And I was very thankful for this friend who let me live with her. But I would still go home every single day to check on my mom to make sure she didn't die or overdose or anything like that. And I was still working and giving her money to pay her rent so she had a place to live. And just looking back, I'm like, I should have been able to just be a kid, a teenager, and enjoy life and all of those things. And I was so wrapped up in making sure my mom was okay and making sure she was okay. And it was hard. And then in the middle of all of that, at the same time, this would have been, I guess, rewind a little bit. This would have been before I was 15. It probably would, when I was about 13, 14, when we were living in the cities and when I was going through that area in the life, to back up a little bit. I was also dealing with, I had this male in my life who was an older gentleman who was like an authority over me, kind of, you know, a guardian almost. And in order for me to be able to go do things, to like go out and see my friends or go out and do things, I had to do things for him to make him happy, for me to go out and do the things. So I was dealing with all of this of not feeling good enough and all of my mom's things, but then on top of it, having to please this other person in order to go do the things I wanted to do to rebel. And I was like, okay, well, if I want to go do these things, I just have to do it. I just have to do these things. And so that was really hard it just felt like I just always had something going on, whether it was that or it was my mom or it was the gang I was involved in that had stuff going on. I never had a peace with anything that was around me. It was always just chaos that was surrounding me, or I was always having to do something for somebody, whether it's my mom or that guy or whoever. I was just always having to do something in order to do something or get a reaction, or I could never just be and just be, you know. It was hard. So then fast forwarding back to when I lived with my mom and I was about 15, 16 years old, she was bad. The husband was bad, and I had moved out. I was living with a friend, and at this time I was around the time to graduate high school, and I knew I didn't want that life, so I did anything possible to get out of it, and that's where I met Aubrey's dad, and he kind of took me. I knew I wasn't like in love with him, and because at that time I didn't know what love was either. I didn't know that you had a choice and all of the things. I kind of just went off of feelings and emotions, and I'm like, I'm this hurt, broken person, and he's willing to take me and move me into his house and take care of me, so I'm gonna do it. So I did it, and we got pregnant with Aubrey, and then that's when things continued. They were okay, but for whatever reason, we're like, let's let my mom move in with us, because I wanted to still try to take care of her, and I wanted to be that person who's going to fix her. I've always been a person who wants to fix somebody and make them better and be that person for them. I think because I didn't have that for me, somebody there for me, I wanted to be that for her.
You were giving to your mom the thing that you needed. And desired, and what, you know, what we're not getting. And so that's what you were doing.
That's true. That is true. So we let her move in with us, and we said, all you have to do is take care of Aubrey while I go to work. I won't make you pay any bills. And her husband were living with us. You guys don't have to pay bills. Like, we'll feed you. Just watch Aubrey while I go to work. And I was working at Verizon at the time. And I'll never forget one time I came home, and Aubrey was she was a baby. She was probably 6 months old, 7 months old. And she was just on the floor. And I'm like, where's my mom? And I went in the room, and she was so high on heroin. She couldn't even, like, get herself off of the couch. And she was just... I was like, I didn't even know what to do. I called Aubrey's dad, and I was freaking out because I'm like, I don't know if she's dying, because she wouldn't move. She couldn't get up. She couldn't lift herself up. And at the same time, she had my child. She was watching my kid. So then we kicked them out, and that was kind of the end with my mom. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, it's not just me you're hurting now, you're hurting my child.
Well, I think, you know, even in that, I'm sure, you know, people are like, well, you know what your mom was, but there's something in us as kids, it doesn't matter how old we are, it's like we know what they're doing, but yet you don't want to believe what they're doing. It's like, okay, maybe they won't do it. If she's got a granddaughter, then maybe that will be the thing that'll go, hey, you know what I mean? I've got something to live for, or, you know, this will help me get clean or whatever, you know.
No, and people told me that many times, and they told me, they're like, your mom is on drugs, your mom is on heroin, your mom's really bad, you need to let her go and figure it out. And I was like, no, she's not. Like, I would know if my mom's on heroin. And I knew, but like you said, I looked past it and I was like, I just wanted my mom. I wanted her with me.
Exactly.
So I was willing to look past it to a point until I got to that point where she was hurting my kid. Because I was like, no, you hurt me enough. You're not going to hurt my child any more than you hurt me. So we kicked her out. And we just kind of lived life for a while. And then that's when I was working at Verizon, actually. And I was a manager. And we had these manager meetings. And that's where I met Jake. My husband, Jake, was through Verizon. That's our great love story. And so Jake and I started talking. And then Aubrey's dad and I ended up being a big blow up thing, because I didn't leave that relationship how I should have. I should have just ended things and started things. But of course, me not knowing how to do anything, I'm already from all this chaos, all this trauma. I'm insecure, I'm hurt. Because at this point in my life, you would look at me thinking I had it together. I had a good job, I had good money, I had a good car, I had Aubrey, and it would look like I was happy, but on the inside, I was just completely destroyed. I was just this hurt little girl still that was still trying to please everybody. I was trying to look like the world. I was trying to...
You were really angry.
I was very angry.
A lot of anger.
I had a lot of anger build up inside of me. I would snap like that. If somebody said something to me, I would just go off on them almost. I wasn't a nice person. If you knew me at that time, I was not a nice person. Everybody would say, like, don't talk to Sierra.
You had a lot of stuff, though.
I had a lot of stuff, and I didn't realize all the stuff that I had pushed down and kept pushing down, because I would just pile something else on it, and I'm like, I don't have time to deal with that. I'm just going to push this on it. And from things happening so young, too, I didn't realize those things were trauma, or those things were going to affect me. They just kind of sat inside me and were seeds that were planted inside me that would eventually come out. So I was working at Verizon. I met Jake, and so then I cheated on Aubrey's dad, and that was a whole thing and a whole blow-up fight. And then when I did that, he obviously kicked me out, which I would have too. You know, I would have kicked somebody out. So I went and lived with my cousin in Barron, and of course, my mom's living there. So that's a whole, so it's like I could never escape anything I felt. I felt like I was always just trapped. Every time I would turn somewhere, it'd be like another situation I was put in. So she was there. And at this point, I don't know if my mom, because I had gotten to the point where I just didn't talk to her. I didn't give her the time of day. I wasn't giving her money or feeding into her anymore. So I don't know if she was doing it out of pity, or out of to get a reaction from me, or out of just because she was so gone in her own head. We were there, me and Aubrey were there, we were sleeping in the living room, I was in a playpen, and all of a sudden my cousin starts screaming at me, and I ran in the room, and my mom's laying there foaming at the mouth. Just, I've never seen anything like it. It was the scariest thing, I think, scarier than walking in with a belt around her neck trying to hang herself. She was foaming at the mouth, and so I'm screaming, Aubrey's in the other room, you know, and so like my mind instantly is triggering, like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing the same stuff that happened to me. Aubrey is seeing it in the situation I'm in. So we had to call 911, and like the ambulance and a bunch of cops were in there. And I was like, I need to figure something out. Like everything I seen and went through that killed me as a person, almost like killed my identity, I'm exposing Aubrey to now. Like she was only a year old probably at this point. Probably a year old, but still knowing like it's doing something to her, and she's seeing it, and she's hearing the screaming, and she's hearing the crying, and the ambulance coming out in and out, and the cops are now here and asking all these questions. And so I was like, I need to figure something out. So then that's when I got my own apartment. We moved in, and then I met Jake. Jake and I started dating, and that was really fun for a while. That was fun for the first month or so, until we realized that we both came from trauma and chaos, and it just, we threw each other in a room, and we're like, let's see what happens now.
Yeah, exactly. But isn't that something, though? It's like you hear the story, and you hear all of the trauma, and you hear all the things, and it's like, you know, sometimes it's like, you know, why do we have to rehash all those things? But it's like for people to see the things that you've gone through, all of the trauma, all of the some of the things were choices as a, you know, high school adult. They were totally on you, not because of what, you know, happened here, but it's like it had something to do with it, basically. You know, we still make our own choices when we get older. But it's like those things got you to where you are today, and then you meet Jake, and then you guys went through. You guys got to check out that podcast, because that was really good too. Their story together. But it's like, I knew the person that you were. I remember the first time that I met you, we were invited. I don't even know how we got invited, because I didn't know you that well, but it was Aubrey's maybe 3rd birthday or something. Could that be right?
I think because we had it at the church, and it was in the basement, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think the first time it was at Doc and Robbins.
Oh, yes, in the shed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Aubrey was little.
She was tiny.
Yeah, she was little. And I remember us being invited, and it was cool. And, you were nice, but not really nice. Yeah. But it's like, because we knew Jake, and, we had a relationship with Jake and his mom and stuff like that. And then you guys, kind of slowly started coming, and then kind of doing the counseling with you and Jake, and being in the room counseling. And I remember sitting there and watching you and seeing all of this anger just like come out of you. And I remember identifying, because it was a lot of what I went through and felt. So I knew, it was just like, oh, I get that. It's like the anger wasn't who you were even, but it was, I don't know what to do with all of this. And you just would erupt.
Yeah.
And I remember Jake sitting there not really knowing what to do.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is how you push through all of that stuff. You had a lot of stuff to process, because it's like you can't process things that were done to you as a kid when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And so you become an adult, and then you realize, okay, this is not working. This is not what I want for life. And then you become a Christian.
Yeah.
And then kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I didn't know God at all through my whole childhood, through my teenage years, anything like that. The first time I met God, or even knew there was a God, was when I met Jake. And the only reason we found out he knew about God, he grew up with God, but the only reason we were reintroduced to God, and I was introduced to God, was because we were at such a terrible time in our life where we needed help with our bills. So being the great mom she was, Jake's mom, she's like, well, come to church and I'll help you pay your rent. We're like, all right, we'll go to church, we'll get our rent paid, we'll get some free breakfast, why not? I'm like, what can it hurt? It can't get any worse than it is now.
Right.
So we went to church, and you were actually preaching that day, and you were, of course, preaching on relationships, because why wouldn't you be?
Yeah.
And because, like she said, we were just at a crazy point in our life financially, in our relationship, and we needed a whole lot of saving. And so she was preaching a crazy word on relationships, and I remember leaving church that day, and I was like, I told Jake, I'm like, something is different. I don't know what this feeling is inside of me. I had like little butterflies almost, and I felt like a joy and a happiness, and I felt like a hope inside of me that I never felt before, where we would get these temporary fixes in our relationship, and even in my childhood, where I would go out partying, or I would go out and buy things, or get my hair done, or do whatever, and I would get that temporary fix and that temporary feeling inside of me. But when I left there, it was different. Like, I felt that same thing, but it was more satisfying, and it was like I needed more. I needed more of that. So I told Jake, I'm like, I want to keep going. Like, we should keep trying it. So we're like, okay. Because we both left there, and we were both happy. And normally when we would leave things, we would fight, because of me, because I'd be like, oh, there was a girl there, and you were looking at her, blah, 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 But it was different when we left that day, and our car was calm and happy when we were riding in the car. And so we continued to come to church, and it just turned into another thing. We did the church, and then we started the counseling, and I started to get freedom, and I never knew the freedom that I needed until I got it. And looking back at it, I was asking God, I was like, why didn't I know you growing up? And why didn't I feel your presence or anything like that? And he was like, it wasn't anything by your fault. It's just the situation you were put in. And even though you went through those things, I was with you. And even though you didn't see me or feel me, I was still with you. And he's like, I brought you from where you were to where you are now, and now you can use this, and you can help other people get freed and help other people get saved. And just showing them, that what you went through, it doesn't, identify who you are. It doesn't mark who you are.
Right.
Yes, it has a mark on you and it is part of your identity, but it's not your identity. And it doesn't mean that you have to continue to be this angry, crabby, insecure person who hates life and who can't forgive people and who's bitter. And I just feel like God just really reminded me, even on the way here, just where I came from. Because looking back, like I said in the beginning, looking back to who I was then and who I am now, I don't recognize that person. I even say to myself, there's no way I did those things. There's no way I went through those things. There's no way I seen those things. Right. And I almost question it, but it's because of how far I've came with Jesus. It's because of the things that he's filled inside of me. It's because of the things he's put inside of me and the things he's helped me not forget, but move on from and forgive and release. And there's so much power in releasing things, and there's so much power in giving him those things. And it wasn't until I actually fully committed myself to the Lord and was like, I'm all in, Lord. Like, I want you to completely transform me, and I want you to fill me and fill that spot inside of me that I've been longing for and searching for. It wasn't until I could give him the hurt from my mom, give him the sexual abuse that I went through, give him the hurt, the trauma, the things I've seen, give him my whole past, that I was able to be completely freed from that. Yeah,
that's the power of really forgiveness. And it's like, forgiveness isn't excusing the things that happen. Forgiveness is releasing you from the chain that it keeps you to your past, and that you can't actually move on. And the only way that I can truly forgive is to actually allow the Lord to work in my life and in my heart and give me the grace to be able to forgive. And like you said, it's not like things that you forget. It's like, I loved how you said that. It's like you were looking back on your past and going, I just, it's so hard to believe that I even did those things or I went through those things, because those things don't have power over you anymore. That's the power of forgiveness. True forgiveness is, it's hard to remember the things that I went through, but I know that I went through them, but they don't have power over me. Now I have power. I have the power over those things, and now I use those things for me, or not for me, but I use those things to share so that people can hear those things and hopefully get freedom from it. Because to see that you're a business owner now, you've got a great marriage, you've got, kids, you're raising your kids in a healthy environment. It's not perfect.
It's
never,
not at all.
Nothing is ever perfect. You and Jake still have to work through things, and you still have to work through things.
For sure.
But when you work through things from a place of being already up here because you know who you are, it's a whole lot easier. But you own your own business, you guys, you have a home, and your things are not perfect, but they're really good.
They're healthy.
They're healthy. That's a great way to put it. It's healthy, and things can be healthy for anybody. I don't care what a person has gone through, whether it's sexual abuse, growing up in an environment, a culture, and things like that don't just happen on a reservation. Things like that happen happen in my culture. Growing up in a different, I say Louisiana's like a different country, But the beautiful thing of going through hard things is when we really do allow, you get to that point where you're like, I can't do this on my own. I don't really know much about God. You guys come to go to church because basically your mother-in-law's paying you to come, and you're getting a free breakfast out of the deal. But I believe that God orchestrated that. Because I believe that He loved you so much that He wanted to give you guys a chance, another opportunity. So I just think the power of forgiveness is really, important.
Oh, for sure.
And it doesn't just affect you, but it affects your whole family. If you wouldn't have been willing to forgive, you would have carried the bitterness, the resentment, and your kids would have been paying the price for that. But because you made those hard decisions to get whole, to get free, to push and to get whole and to get free, you had to really be vulnerable and authentic and real in areas that you probably didn't want to be.
Yeah, no.
You know, you wanted to probably keep things hidden, but you had to bring things to light so that you can actually be set free and realize that as a kid, we can't help what happens to us. But as adults, we can help how we allow those things to affect us now.
Yeah.
And you decided that those things are not going to determine my future, but those things are actually going to help me help others.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing, and that's what's so exciting.
Yeah.
Because now you guys have a small group that you guys are doing with families, and I believe that that's going to help bring freedom to women that struggle with insecurity, that struggle with forgiving, maybe that have hidden things in their life that haunt them in a sense and have power over them, that you'll be able to help bring freedom to.
Yeah, we're pretty excited with what God is doing this season and what God has revealed to us. And like you said, even though I went through it and it was hard, I would never want to go back. And I do everything possible now to keep myself from going back there, you know, staying in the Word and staying connected to God and staying plugged into the church and my church family, and just knowing where I was and seeing where I am now. I just know that that's nothing I ever want to experience again. And I just want other people to know, like you said, it doesn't matter what you went through and what you saw or what family you come from or anything. God can bring you out of that, and God meets you where you're at. Just like He met us. We were at a terrible spot, but He was still willing to meet us where we're at and bring us here, and continues to meet us and be with us. But we're just having to give that back to Him and just choose Jesus over anything else.
Yeah. The cool thing is that, you know, God didn't expect you guys to clean up your act before you came to Him. So it's not like you had to clean up your act before you went to church.
Right.
It's not like you had to be, you know, perfect to come.
Yeah.
You guys just came as you were.
Yeah, and
God met you exactly where you were at, and He just revealed His love to you, that those feelings that you were feeling. I loved how you said that. You felt like those butterflies. It was like that was the Holy Spirit working and moving inside of you. But you loved that feeling.
Yeah.
You loved that, and you wanted more.
Yeah, because I was so used to having to do something in order to get that feeling, in order to give something of myself that was hurting me to get that, but I didn't have to give anything. I was able to come my broken, messy, insecure self, and I was able to still receive that from Him.
Yeah. That's so cool, because that is really the love of God.
Yeah.
You know, is that's He gave so that we can actually receive.
Yeah.
And so I just think that's so cool. So this was really, really powerful, Sierra. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to overemphasize this whole thing to, I don't know who's listening to this, but the importance of forgiveness is that even though when things happen to us that maybe we didn't want, or maybe we made choices that hurt others and hurt ourselves, the power in forgiveness, number one, it is forgiving those that have hurt you. Number two, forgiving yourself. And number three, allowing the Lord to come into your life and asking Him to forgive you really brings true peace, and it brings true peace and true joy, the things that we don't have to work for, like Sierra said, the things that she had to do, you know, that temporary thing, that joy that we feel when we buy a new shirt or buy new shoes or go get ice cream, or, you know, those things are just a temporary Band-Aid fix for something that only the Lord can fix. And so I just want to encourage you guys today that if that is something that you need, there are so many, we have people that we can get you in contact with that can really help you. We can put Sierra's information, her email, on the bottom of here, and feel free to email her if you have any questions or just struggling in an area. So anyways, I just want to thank you guys for joining us on this episode of Women of Purpose. And you can check us out on all platforms of social media, and our website is womanofpurpose.net. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.